Oh, I'm limping today. I think I took an arrow to the knee earlier in a battle. An arrow to the knee. I'm limping. It's not the first time that line has been used. It's oft quoted from The Name of the Wind. I took an arrow to the knee. I actually first saw it in a David Eddings book. I think it was The Queen of Sorcery. Someone took an arrow to the knee in that book too. I just took an arrow to the knee. It's the review you've been waiting for. Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Let's talk about The Name of the Wind. And my buddy Pat Rothfuss. We share the same literary agent, Pat Rothfuss and me. In fact, if you've watched some of my writing advice videos, I tell you that I approached my literary agent specifically because he represented Pat Rothfuss, and Pat Rothfuss writes really thick books. And I knew my books were really thick. Here's my book here. Look how big it is. It's just as big as the Pat Rothfuss books. Let's compare. Let's compare the size. Look at that. Big books, folks. Big, epic fantasy books. I approached my agent saying, hey, I know you represent Pat Rothfuss and Tad Williams and some other fantasy writers that write really huge books. I've written a really huge fantasy book, so I know you're not going to be scared of it. So give it a chance. Well, he gave it a chance and he got me a book deal. That's how it's done. So I've got that connection to him. Now just don't ask me when book 3 is going to come out, because my agent doesn't know. I don't know. I don't think Pat knows. He's doing his thing. It'll be out when it's out. People think because I have the same agent as him that I know. I get asked all the time, you must have inside info. I don't know crap. I'm anticipating book 3 as much as the rest of y'all. That being said, let's go down the list of things that we need to talk about this book, and I'm going to be straight up front with you. I bought The Name of the Wind the day it came out, way back in 2006 or 7, whenever. Bought it straight out the gate with the old cover. You might remember the old Donato Giancola cover that had Quoth on it right there. Quoth was right there on the cover, red hair and all. They've since ditched that cover. I thought it was a good painting. I think this is a better cover, so we'll talk about the covers here. I like them. They're photoshopped. I think they're quite elegantly done. I do like the bold type. I think that they're classy. Sold so many copies, it's just an instantly classic cover. I give it a high grade. Good cover. But I gotta be honest, folks. When I first bought this book back in the day, I read it. It was like a big hyped book when it came out. I bought it. I read it, and I was just kind of like, it's all right. I was kind of lukewarm. But I thought, there was something about the writing that I was really turned on. There was a magical writing, and as I was reading it, I was like, the story maybe really ain't doing it for me, but gosh, this guy can write. This guy's got some eloquently beautiful sentences here. And it seems like every word just belongs where it's supposed to be. And so I set it aside for 4, 5, 6 years, and then the Wise Man's Fear was getting ready to come out, so I was like, well, I'm going to reread this so I can be prepared for Wise Man's Fear. I reread it. Oh my gosh. It became one of my favorite fantasies of all time. If you've watched my top 40 fantasy series of all time, you know where I ranked this one. Pretty high on my list. And that's what the thing is. Sometimes you read a book, and everybody's had this. Sometimes you read a book and you're just kind of like, And then you read it a second time and you're like, oh, it's suddenly one of my favorites. That's what's happened here with The Name of the Wind. Why? Because I just, there's so much going on in this book. I mean, everybody loves this book. It's kind of like an epic fantasy memoir told from Kvothe's point of view. Kvothe, it's like Kvothe is an old man, kind of like the Farseer trilogy with the Assassin's Apprentice, where Fitzchivalry is an old man, and he's relaying the story back to us of his youth. And Kvothe is he's in the. If you haven't read this, I'm assuming if you're watching this review, you've probably read it. Everybody's read it. But if you haven't read it, I won't do spoilers, but we'll just go over a few basic things here. That Kvothe, he's running an inn, the Waystone Inn, and some people are starting to recognize him, like, hey, you used to be a famous guy. And he's like, no, I want no famous guy. I ain't no Brad Pitt here. I ain't no Brad Pitt. I ain't no famous dude. You're thinking of someone else. I might look like the guy. I might look exactly like the guy. But I ain't him. But people are like not buying it. They're like, no, you're Brad Pitt. We know who Brad Pitt is. Very unmistakably, you're Brad Pitt. You are the King Killer. You are, and he calls himself the King Killer, the Bloodless. There's a lot of things that he's like, I did a lot of things, and then this guy comes through. He's got his little, helper, Bast, that helps him in the inn, that kind of covers for him a little bit. Then this guy comes through called the Chronicler. Not just a chronicler, but the chronicler. The chronicler of the history of everything, and he's like, hey, I want your story. We all know, even though no matter how much you try to tell us you ain't Brad Pitt, we know you're Brad Pitt. We know you're Brad Pitt, and we want your life story, Mr. Kvothe. And so Kvothe is like, okay, you want my life story, then we're going to do it right. We're going to sit down here, we're going to do this right, and you're going to chronicle my life story. And so that's how the story is set up. And then we go back and he chronicles his life story from when he was a kid. And it's cool because, it starts out, most fantasy books are about orphan farm boys with a destiny. Well, he's kind of an orphan, but we get to meet his parents, and that's kind of sad. Here's the thing is, if you're the parents in a fantasy story, if you're the parents of a young boy that's supposed to save the realm, man, it sucks to be you, because you're going to be killed off in the very beginning of the book. That's just the way it is. You're going to die. Got to get you out of the way, because what parent in their right mind would ever let their kid go off on an adventure to save the world? No, we got to get rid of the parents. So, minor spoiler, we see Kvothe as a young guy, and he's in a traveling theater troupe with his parents, and his parents get killed. So he can be an orphan, so he can have the sympathy of the reader just for the fact that he's an orphan. And he goes on his adventure, and these are the writing advice parts. I always do writing advice on these videos. When you read this book, like I said before, every sentence is just beautiful. Every paragraph is just impeccable. Every word seems like it belongs exactly where it belongs. So you can study The Name of the Wind just for that. There's not a paragraph out of place. You can study the whole book from start to finish. But I want you to take a special look at the scene where Kvothe comes across the wagon sort of camp and finds out that everybody's dead, right? And his parents. And then the scene where, and how everything is described in that scene, from the guy with the pale skin, Cinder, I think his name is, and how Cinder and the other people in that sort of outlaw group sort of talk to each other, how they're each described. Pay attention to everything in that scene, and you can teach yourself how to set up a sympathetic character, unsympathetic characters, mysterious characters. Pat Rothfuss does a brilliant job in that scene of just setting up so many things that you can study that scene alone and learn a ton of stuff about writing. And just take notes on just that scene. And then take notes on the rest of the book too, because everything else is fabulous also. And and the one other thing that's great about this story is it's just a simple memoir of Kvothe, who he's a young boy, he's orphaned, he cries a lot. I do have one critique of the book, is that the dude cries at everything that comes to cries so much. Stop with the crying. I mean, come on. So anyway, he's a young boy. His parents die. It's a minor spoiler, but that happens right in the first 100 pages. So he goes. He's an orphan. He's trying to make his way in a world by himself. He comes to the place where they've got the school of magic, kind of like the Hogwarts of the place, and he really wants to be in that. And there's some of those scenes. Another scene to study is when he finagles his way into that school. That's very clever. And we got Kvothe. Our main character is a very clever kid. Smarter than everybody else. He kind of knows he's smarter than everybody else. Kind of like, when you read the Lee Child Jack Reacher books, how Jack Reacher is just more badass than everybody. He always wanders into town and he's just the most badass dude. He's the smartest, funniest, wittiest, most badass. That is Kvothe. Smartest, funniest, wittiest, not the most badass though. He kind of gets his ass kicked a lot. And he cries about it. But he learns through this. He learns through these trials about, magic and things like that. And he's going to get his comeuppance, not with his muscles, but, with his smarts. And I think that's why this appeals to a lot of people. Because a lot of people, it's a very coming of age, wish fulfillment fantasy for young kids that just were maybe not the quarterback of the high school football team and maybe didn't get to go to the prom with the prom queen. It's very, very appealing to that sort of audience. Because we all have that wish fulfillment where we can just be the smartest dude in the room no matter where we're at. And then we can back it up with maybe not our muscles, but with, our other stuff that we've learned to be good at. And Kvothe is that guy. And another reason this is appealing to people, the reason this book sells a lot is because we've also got Kvothe in relationships with other characters. And those relationships are relatable too, especially the relationship he has with Denna, who's kind of the hot chick, kind of the beauty queen, the prom queen of the story, where every guy that comes around her just flirts with her, and she knows how to work that. And Kvothe kind of finds himself in a friend zone, which, a lot of us dudes, we've been there. We've been there. We've been in a friend zone. It ain't a good place to be. And Pat Rothfuss describes that feeling that Kvothe has for Denna and how he's accepting of all of her flaws. He helps her. He's her friend. But he likes her. He likes her. And he's hurt by the things, the mean, cruel things that he does. And then we've got this other girl, Ari, who's kind of like a little more sympathetic and a little bit, it's like, hey, why don't Kvothe go with her kind of a thing. And, it's got just so many layers of coming of age stuff, wish fulfillment stuff, that I can see why this book is as popular as it is. Even though, and this is a caveat, even though there's no sword fights, there's no action scenes, there's no fiery explosions or car chases, it ain't Fast and the Furious. It ain't the movie 300. It's a lot of just Kvothe being Kvothe. And he's a strong enough character that he can carry a huge fantasy book all by himself. And that is a remarkable achievement that Patrick Rothfuss has managed to do. I mean, one single dude can carry massive fantasy novels all by himself without even pulling a sword and chopping the head off a dragon or a goblin, or going on a quest or finding a magic talisman, or using his magic wand and Harry Pottering, stuff. I mean, there's some of that, but it's really underplayed. And it's part of the brilliance of the writing. And when I first read this book, if you go back to the beginning of my review, I mentioned that I kind of like, it's all right. It's good writing. It's a story is like, A lot of people have that reaction because of the lack of adventure, Conan adventure. It's not Conan the Barbarian. It's the name of the wind. It's the name of the wind. They're searching for the name of the wind. Anyway, the fact that the dude wrote a book that just became a mega seller simply off the strength of the main character is nothing short of remarkable. And I get it. I like it. Like I said, the second time I read it, I was reading it more through sort of the eyes of a beginning author myself. Back in 2011 was when the second one came out, right when I was starting to kind of get fairly good at writing. And then I was just like, man, not only is this written well, but gosh, there's so many things I can learn myself about writing just by kind of studying what this guy's doing. So, that's the main story, right? I mean, that's it. I mean, I didn't give any spoilers, I hope. Other than he's put in the friend zone. Brad Pitt got put in the friend zone. Name of the Wind. Yeah, it's 10 out of 10, folks. This is one of them 10 out of 10 fantasy books. It really is. And I imagine most of you guys that are watching this review have read it. I got you noticed. I got the hardcover too. I got a hardcover. Got the little paperback. Got the audible.com version. Don't have the ebook. We don't do ebooks here. 10 out of 10.